All right, class, we're going to make a new class called vehicle, which we will use in a few moments to make some vehicle objects with. Now, this class is not going to have a main method. This is a data class. We're describing a new type of data. That's the great thing about what you can do with object-oriented programming, such as Java. You can create objects to model the real world or the application that you're working on. So let's say we're working at maybe a car dealership and we want to deal with class vehicles. We want to sell vehicles at a dealership. So if you were a coder there, you would no doubt make a vehicle class. So you could make vehicle objects. Well, some of the properties or attributes or fields that you might put in a vehicle object would be as shown here. A string for the make, a string for the model, an int for the model year, and a double for the price. Now, you would have many, many more fields or properties, of course, but we'll try to keep it simple just for this first example. Once you've decided on these, and by the way, you should make these private so that they're accessible only by the methods that we put into this class. The next thing that you would normally do in this class would be to create a constructor or two. We're going to make two. I'm going to do it by hitting source on the menu, generate constructor using fields. I'm going to make sure that all of the fields are checked off and hit OK. And there it is. Eclipse generates the constructor for us. This is the parameterized constructor, which we will use to make new vehicles by specifying all of their fields, make, model, year, and price. This is a super here is a call to the superclass of all objects in Java, which is the capital O object class. You won't see that in the textbook, and it could be left off, but all objects do inherit from capital O object in Java. Now, the next thing you might want to do after that is make yet another constructor that you could use to make a vehicle object without specifying the values for its fields. So let's do that on the menu as well. Source, generate a constructor from the superclass. And as you can see, we get a simpler version. It still has the super, but we now don't have any parameters in the definition here. There's nothing inside the parentheses of the constructor. We would use this whenever we want to make a new vehicle object and we don't know at the time what the field values are. Okay, so we've got two constructors. This one we call the noarg constructor because there are no args. When we go to use it, we won't be putting any args inside the parentheses. Next, we would want to use some methods that give us access to all of these properties or fields up here. And to do that, Eclipse can help us there too. We'll select generate getters and setters. I'll make sure everything is checked, and that will give us both the getters and the setters. I'll just expand one of them, and you'll see that both the getters and setters are selected if you select the top level checkbox. And I'll hit OK. And because we have 4 fields or attributes in this vehicle class, we get actually 4 setters and 4 getters, all automatically generated for us. Look at them all here. Here are all the getters, 4 of them. They all have the same format, get, followed by the name of the attribute or property. Notice the capital M on the make. And here's the setter. Here's the setter for the make. So the get make, because the make property is a string, it's going to return a string. So its return type is string, and it's going to return the make. The set make has to know the value of the make that's going to be assigned to the object, and it uses code like this to set that value. So you've got a getter and a setter for each property. There are some programs that can examine a class, discover that there's a set model method, such as this, and determine from it that there is a model attribute of type string in the object. Okay, so those are our getters and setters. And typically we would make one more type of method using again, the source on the menu here, and that would be the toString. The toString method is a special one, which is generally used to display the values that are stored in the fields or attributes of an object. So I'm just going to leave everything checked off and hit OK. And there it is. I'm going to actually move it. I'm going to cut it away from there. I didn't have my cursor in the right place when I started that, I guess. Usually that's going to be down below, so I'm going to paste it down here. And there's the toString method. It's got @override in front of it because we're actually overriding the toString method of capital O object. More about that later. But what the toString method does is it returns a string showing the state or status of the object by displaying the values of its attributes or fields. And it returns the string. I'm going to actually simplify this just a little bit. I'm going to take out the word vehicle. I could leave that in, but I'll take that out. I'll leave everything else except the closing square brackets here. I'll just turn it off at price at the end, just to simplify it a little bit. So this is not a bad definition of a class that we could use to create vehicle objects in an application. I'm just going to save that. And then I'm going to go to a vehicle test program here in which we will create objects using this class as our new data type. Here it is. I've called it vehicle test. And I'm using the, in the first two examples here, I'm going to create objects by using the parameterized constructor. So I've got vehicle sharp, new vehicle, Audi R8, 2018, $195,500. That's about right for the price of that too, if it's loaded. And then I have a family vehicle, Honda Odyssey, 2016. And then here in this last one, I'm going to create another final vehicle object, but I don't know what the field values are, so I'm going to use that noarg constructor to make the object. Okay, so now I've created a few objects of type vehicle. That's the purpose of creating a data class, is so that you have a new data type for your application. Now, if I undo some of the code that I had here, I'm going to just add some more code to here that I'd previously written. Because we don't have any field values for this unc object, I can, however, use the setters to specify those values after I create the object. So here you can see that we are setting the make to be Kia, the model to be a Soul, the year 2008, and the price to be as you see here. So after you create a new object using the noarg constructor, you can set its attribute values by using the setters. Now I'm going to assume here that I'm a car salesman at a car dealership, and I get a commission rate of 2.5% for every on all of my sales. That's my com rate. I made this a constant by using the final keyword, and you'll notice that I've used uppercase to name it. And that is the Java standard for naming constants. So you should do the same. Now I'm going to keep track of my total sales. I've set that to 0, and then I'm going to make an array of vehicles. Notice the square brackets here. That means I'm creating an array of vehicles. I'm going to call it sales today, and I'm going to use the array initializer. Inside curly braces, I'll specify the names of our three objects, sharp, family, and unc. So that creates an array. Now I'm going to use an enhanced for loop, or also known as a for each loop here, to go through the array element by element, storing each vehicle in a variable called v inside that sales today array. And then I'm going to use system.out.println and only v. That's going to represent each object as we go through the array. And the nifty thing about that is that calls the toString method by default. If you print an object variable, the toString method will be executed automatically. You don't have to say v.toString, just v will get it done. Now once I've accessed the object, I want to add its price, v.getPrice, onto my total sales. And then I can print a summary down below here of what happened for the day with those 3 vehicles. So let's just see how much money I would have made if I was in fact making 2.5% on sales like that. Okay, there's the output of the 2-string. That's the output of the 2-string for the 3 objects. And then down below here I have the summary. I sold $242,000 worth of vehicles, and my commission is $6,000 for the day. Sign me up. Where do I apply for that job? Okay, this is a good little introduction to why you would create a data class, how you create that data class. You give it some properties, make a constructor. Generally, it's a good idea to make a noarg constructor as well as a parameterized constructor. Set up your getters and setters. Sometimes you don't need them all. I put them all in here. And make a 2-string method to summarize the state of an object in your program when you go to use it. This doesn't run. This is just the data class. I've got a vehicle test program that has the main method where we create objects of type vehicle.